The pregnancy test slipped from my trembling fingers and clattered onto the marble bathroom floor. 2 pink lines. After 3 years of trying, countless fertility treatments, and too many tears to count, I was finally pregnant. I pressed my hands against my flat stomach, tears streaming down my face. This was it, the missing piece that would complete our perfect life. Marcus would be over the moon. We'd been talking about starting a family since our wedding day 4 years ago. I grabbed my phone to call him, then stopped. No, this deserved something special. I'd surprise him at dinner tonight with Lily and James. My best friend since college would be thrilled. She'd been my shoulder to cry on through every negative test, every failed treatment. Racing downstairs, I pulled out my laptop to cancel my afternoon meetings. That's when I saw it, a notification from our shared cloud storage. Marcus had uploaded new photos, probably from his business trip to Chicago last week. I clicked the folder, expecting to see boring conference pictures or maybe some tourist shots. Instead, my world shattered into a million pieces. The first photo showed Marcus in a hotel room, his arms wrapped around a woman in red lingerie. The second showed them kissing. The third was too explicit to process. But it was the fourth photo that made me vomit right there on my laptop keyboard. The woman's face was clearly visible, laughing at something off camera, her auburn hair cascading over her bare shoulders. It was Lily. My Lily. The woman who'd held me while I sobbed over another negative pregnancy test just 2 weeks ago. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned, hoping my mind was playing tricks on me. But there was no denying what I saw. 23 photos spanning 3 days, documenting what was clearly not their first time together. Room service receipts showed charges for champagne and strawberries, the same combination Marcus had surprised me with on our anniversary. My phone buzzed. A text from Lily. Can't wait for dinner tonight. I have so much to tell you about my Chicago conference. Chicago, the same city where Marcus had been for his business trip. Another text, this time for Marcus. Running late from the office, babe. See you at Giuseppe's at 7. Love you. I looked at the timestamp on the photos. They were uploaded an hour ago, which meant Marcus had just been looking at them, reliving his betrayal while texting me about love. I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by the life we'd built together. The house we'd renovated room by room. The vacation photos on the refrigerator. The fertility medications still lined up on the counter, like tiny soldiers in our war against childlessness. And now I was pregnant, by a man who was sleeping with my best friend. But something else caught my attention as I scrolled through the photos again. In the background of one shot, there was a mirror reflection showing Marcus's laptop open on the hotel desk. I zoomed in, my pulse quickening. The screen displayed what looked like financial documents. Bank statements, investment portfolios, account numbers. Why would Marcus have those open during his romantic getaway? I grabbed my laptop and logged into our joint accounts. Everything looked normal at first glance, but then I noticed the dates. Large transfers had been made to an account I didn't recognize, all during the week Marcus was supposedly in Chicago for work. My hands shook as I dug deeper into our finances. We'd been married for 4 years, but I'd always let Marcus handle the investments and savings. I trusted him completely. That trust was about to cost me everything. The offshore account contained $400,000. Money that had been systematically transferred from our joint savings, my inheritance from my grandmother, and even funds from my small marketing consultancy. But that wasn't the worst part. I found emails between Marcus and someone named David Chun discussing exit strategies and asset protection. The earliest email was dated 6 months ago, right around the time Marcus had suggested I close my consultancy and focus on getting pregnant. Make sure Sarah doesn't have access to the Singapore accounts, one email read. Phase 2 begins next month. The Chicago setup should provide perfect cover. Chicago wasn't a business trip or a romantic getaway with Lily. It was a business meeting to hide our assets before Marcus disappeared from my life. I kept digging, my pregnancy nausea mixing with the sick feeling in my stomach. Flight records showed Marcus had made 6 trips to Chicago in the past 4 months, not the 2 he'd told me about. Hotel receipts revealed he'd been staying at luxury suites, not the budget business hotel he'd claimed. And then I found the real estate documents. Marcus had purchased a $600,000 condo in downtown Chicago 3 months ago. The deed listed two names, Marcus Williams and Lily Patterson. My husband and my best friend had bought property together while I was at home injecting fertility hormones and planning our future family.
My phone rang.
Marcus. Hey, babe, quick change of plans. Can we push dinner to 8? I'm stuck in traffic. I could hear music in the background and what sounded like a woman laughing. Sure, I managed to say. See you then. But I wouldn't be seeing him at Giuseppe's. I had 2 hours to implement the plan that was already forming in my mind. I called Giuseppe's and canceled our reservation, then immediately booked a table for 4 at Bella Vista, the upscale restaurant directly across the street where Marcus and I had our first date. The place held sentimental value, which would make tonight's revelation even more devastating. Next, I called my lawyer, Catherine Mills. We'd used her for our house purchase, and she'd always struck me as sharp and ruthless. Catherine, I need an emergency consultation. I'm about to divorce my husband, and I have evidence of him hiding marital assets. How much are we talking about? At least $400,000 that I can prove, probably more. And he's bought property with another woman. I'll be in my office in 20 minutes. Bring everything. Then I made the hardest call of all. To James, Lily's husband of 2 years. Sarah? What's up? James, are you at home? I need to show you something, and it can't wait. Yeah, Lily's getting ready for dinner with you guys. Is everything okay?
No.
Everything is very not okay. I'm coming over right now. I printed every photo, every email, every financial document. Then I carefully crafted a text message to both Marcus and Lily. Change of plans. Meet me at Bella Vista at 8 instead of Giuseppe's. I have a surprise for you both. The drive to James and Lily's house took 10 minutes, but it felt like an hour. James was my friend too, though not as close as Lily and I had been. He was a good man who worked as a pediatric nurse, the kind of person who dedicated his life to helping children. He didn't deserve this any more than I did. James opened the door with a smile that faded the moment he saw my face. What happened? I handed him the manila envelope. I'm pregnant, James. I found out this morning. I was going to surprise Marcus and Lily at dinner tonight. He stared at me, confused. Congratulations? Why do you look like someone died? Because someone did. Look at the photos. I watched his face change as he flipped through the evidence. Confusion turned to understanding. Understanding turned to disbelief. And disbelief turned to pure rage. How long? His voice was barely a whisper. At least 4 months, based on the financial records. Probably longer. James sank onto his couch, the photos scattered around him. She told me the Chicago conferences were mandatory. Work trips she couldn't get out of. He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. We've been trying to have a baby too. She said she wanted to wait until her career was more stable. There's more, I said gently, sitting beside him. They bought a condo together. I think Marcus is planning to leave me and disappear with our assets. James studied the real estate documents with the careful attention of someone whose world was collapsing. The condo purchase date, that's right after our second wedding anniversary. She bought a place with your husband the week after celebrating 2 years of marriage with me. We sat in silence for a moment, both processing the magnitude of the betrayal. What do you want to do? James finally asked. I want them to pay for what they've done to us. But I need your help. James called in sick to work, and we spent the afternoon planning. By 6 p.m., we had everything in place. I'd met with Catherine, who was already filing emergency motions to freeze all joint assets and prevent Marcus from leaving the country. She'd also contacted a private investigator who specialized in hidden assets. Your husband is sloppy, Catherine had said. The email trail alone will destroy him in divorce court. But the fact that he's used marital funds to buy property with his mistress? That's going to cost him everything. James had used his access to Lily's computer to download her emails, text messages, and photos. What we found was worse than I'd imagined. They'd been planning their new life together for months, discussing how to handle our divorces to minimize financial damage. Sarah's so focused on getting pregnant. She barely pays attention to anything else. One of Lily's texts read, "Marcus says she's completely clueless about the money." "James is the same way," Marcus had replied. "Too trusting for his own good. This will be easier than we thought." But the most damaging evidence came from Lily's deleted photos folder. Screenshots of our private conversations where I'd confided my fears about our fertility struggles, my worries about Marcus seeming distant, my gratitude for having such a supportive friend. She'd been sharing my most vulnerable moments with Marcus, and they'd been laughing about them. At 7:30, James and I took our positions at Bella Vista. I'd requested a corner table with a clear view of the entrance. James sat at the bar, nursing a beer and trying to look casual despite the fury radiating from every muscle in his body. My phone buzzed. "Marcus. On my way, gorgeous. Can't wait to see your surprise. Lily. Running a few minutes late. Traffic is crazy." I replied to both. "No rush. The surprise will be worth the wait." Marcus arrived first, looking handsome in a navy suit I'd bought him for our anniversary. He kissed my cheek and sat down, glancing around the restaurant with appreciation. "Nice choice, babe. Bringing back memories of our first date." Something like that. Lily breezed in 5 minutes later, stunning in a red dress that I suddenly realized was the same one from the hotel photos. She hugged me tightly, her perfume filling my nostrils. "God, I missed you. Chicago was exhausting, but so worth it for my career." "I bet it was," I replied, watching Marcus and Lily carefully avoid eye contact with each other. "You both look so satisfied lately. Like you've been getting everything you wanted." Marcus reached across the table and took my hand. "Speaking of getting what we want, you said you had a surprise?" "I do." I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. "But first, let me ask you both something. Do you believe in fate?" Lily laughed, settling into her chair. "What kind of question is that?" "Well, I was thinking about how amazing it is that you both happened to be in Chicago at the same time last week. What are the odds?" I watched the color drain from both their faces. And then I started thinking about all the other coincidences in our lives lately. Like how Marcus has been working so many late nights right around the time Lily's been having all these work dinners. Marcus cleared his throat. "Sarah, what?" "Oh, but the biggest coincidence of all happened this morning." I picked up my phone and opened the photo gallery. "I found out I'm pregnant." Lily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God, Sarah. That's incredible." I thought so too. After 3 years of trying, countless treatments, all those nights you held me while I cried about feeling like a failure as a woman. I swiped to the next photo. "Remember those nights, Lily?" "Of course I do. You're my best friend. Your problems are my problems, remember?"
Right.
"My problems are your problems." I turned the phone around to show them the screen. "So, I guess this is your problem too." The photo showed Marcus and Lily tangled in hotel sheets, his wedding ring clearly visible on the nightstand beside them. Lily's wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Marcus lurched forward, trying to grab my phone, but I was faster. "There are 22 more where that came from," I said calmly, including some very interesting financial documents that were visible in the background. Marcus slumped back in his chair, his face gray. "Sarah, I can explain." "Oh, you don't need to explain anything to me." I stood up and waved toward the bar. "But you might want to explain it to James." James approached our table with the controlled movements of a man barely containing his rage. He pulled out the chair beside Lily and sat down, placing a manila envelope on the table. "Hello, sweetheart," he said to Lily, his voice deadly quiet. "How was Chicago?" Lily looked like she might faint. "James, what are you doing here?" "Funny story. Sarah invited me. Seems she wanted to share her good news with all her closest friends." He opened the envelope and spread the photos across the table, including the friends who've been screwing her husband. The restaurant had gone silent around us. Other diners were pretending not to stare while our lives imploded in public. Marcus tried one last desperate play. "Sarah, please. Let's talk about this privately. You're pregnant. We need to think about the baby." "The baby?" I laughed, and the sound was harsh even to my own ears. You mean the baby you were planning to abandon when you disappeared to Chicago with my best friend? I pulled out my phone again and began reading from their text messages. Sarah's so focused on getting pregnant, she barely pays attention to anything else. That's what you wrote, Lily. To my husband. About my desperate desire to start a family. Lily was crying now, mascara streaming down her face. Sarah, please. It's not what you think. It's not what I think. You bought a condo together. You've been stealing my money to fund your new life. You've been laughing about my fertility struggles while pretending to be my support system. I leaned forward, my voice dropping to a whisper. What exactly am I supposed to think? James had remained eerily calm throughout the confrontation, but now he spoke. I called your mother, Lily. Told her you wouldn't be coming to Sunday dinner anymore. She asked why, so I sent her the photos. Lily's face went white. You didn't. I also called your boss. Turns out those Chicago conferences? The company has no record of them. You've been using sick days and vacation time to meet Marcus, then lying about it. James smiled coldly. They're reviewing your employment status. Marcus finally found his voice. You can't do this. You're destroying our careers, our families. We're destroying your careers? I stood up, my voice rising. You destroyed our families the moment you decided to betray us. You destroyed our finances when you stole our money. You destroyed our friendships when you turned my best friend into your accomplice. I grabbed my purse and pulled out a business card. This is Catherine Mills, my divorce attorney. She's already filed emergency motions to freeze all our assets, including your Chicago love nest. The private investigator she hired found 2 more offshore accounts you thought I didn't know about. Marcus lunged forward. Sarah, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. I turned to Lily. I also understand that your husband deserves better than a woman who would betray her best friend for money and a married man. James stood up, straightening his jacket. The divorce papers are already drawn up. I'm keeping the house, the cars, and the dog. You can have the condo in Chicago, if you can afford the payments, once the court freezes the stolen funds. 6 months later, I sat in the nursery of my new apartment, folding tiny clothes and feeling my daughter kick against my ribs. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks earlier, with Marcus ordered to pay substantial alimony and child support. The court had been particularly unsympathetic when they learned he'd used marital funds to buy property with his mistress. Catherine had been right. Marcus was sloppy. The investigation uncovered $800,000 in hidden assets, half of which was rightfully mine. Between that, the sale of our house, and the damages awarded for his fraud, I was more financially secure than I'd ever been. Marcus and Lily had tried to make their relationship work, but it fell apart within 2 months. Turns out that relationships built on betrayal don't have solid foundations. Marcus was now living in a studio apartment, working a job that paid half his previous salary after his industry reputation was destroyed by the fraud investigation. Lily had moved back in with her parents after losing her job and her marriage. James had kept their house and was dating a fellow nurse who specialized in pediatric oncology. They were planning a trip to Italy together. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Catherine. Good news and bad news, she said without preamble. Which do you want first? Good news. The forensic accountant found another account in the Cayman Islands. Marcus had $200,000 stashed there that he forgot to mention. Since it was funded with marital assets, half is yours. And the bad news? Lily's trying to sue you for emotional distress. Claims you orchestrated a public humiliation campaign against her. I laughed so hard my daughter started kicking in protest. She wants to sue me for emotional distress? The woman who stole my husband and my money wants to claim I hurt her feelings. That's essentially the argument. Her lawyer thinks they can claim you invaded her privacy by accessing her phone records and emails. Through her husband, who had every right to check his own wife's communications when he suspected infidelity.
Exactly.
Plus, the evidence of her fraud and adultery makes any emotional distress claim laughable. No jury would award damages to someone who orchestrated such an elaborate betrayal. After hanging up, I walked to the window of my nursery and looked out at the city below. My new apartment was smaller than the house I'd shared with Marcus, but it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every decoration, every baby item had been chosen by me, for me and my daughter. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Sarah, it's Lily. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need you to know how sorry I am. I lost everything because of what I did. My marriage, my job, my family's respect. I understand if you can never forgive me, but please know that I regret everything." I read the message twice, then deleted it without responding. Some betrayals were too deep for apologies, and some friendships couldn't survive the deliberate destruction of trust. The best revenge, I'd learned, wasn't elaborate schemes or public humiliation. It was living well despite the efforts of others to destroy you. It was building something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. 3 weeks before my due date, I received an unexpected visitor. James knocked on my door holding a casserole and wearing a nervous expression. "I hope you don't mind me stopping by. I wanted to check on you and bring dinner." "That's incredibly sweet. Come in." We sat in my living room, catching up on the aftermath of our shared devastation. James looked healthier than he had in months, his smile genuine for the first time since that horrible night at Bella Vista. "I have news," he said eventually. "Rachel and I are engaged. She said yes last weekend." "James, that's wonderful." I meant it. He deserved happiness after what Lily had put him through. "There's something else. We want to ask you to be in the wedding party. Not as a bridesmaid," he added quickly, "but as my best woman. If it wasn't for you, I might never have found out the truth. I'd still be married to someone who was stealing from me and lying to my face." I felt tears spring to my eyes. "I'd be honored. And Sarah? When your daughter is old enough, I want her to know that she has an honorary uncle who will always be there for both of you." 2 days later, labor started at 3 a.m. James drove me to the hospital while Rachel met us there with my hospital bag. My daughter was born at sunrise, perfect and healthy, with my eyes and thankfully none of Marcus's features that I could detect. I named her Grace Elizabeth Williams, Grace for the grace I'd found in the midst of betrayal, Elizabeth for my grandmother, whose inheritance had helped secure our future despite Marcus's attempts to steal it. Marcus sent a text message an hour after her birth. "I know I don't deserve to ask, but please let me be part of her life. I want to be better than I was." I showed the message to James, who was holding Grace while I rested. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. She deserves to know her father, but she also deserves better than a father who would abandon her for another woman." I looked at my daughter, sleeping peacefully in James's arms. "I guess I'll figure it out as I go. Whatever you decide, you won't be doing it alone. Rachel and I will make sure Grace grows up knowing she's surrounded by people who love her." Grace took her first steps in the backyard of James and Rachel's new house, stumbling between her honorary uncle and aunt while I captured it all on video. She was a happy, curious toddler who called James Uncle Jame and brought light to everyone who met her. Marcus had been allowed supervised visits once a month, court-ordered, and always in the presence of a social worker. He'd been working to rebuild his life, attending therapy, and making what seemed like genuine efforts to change. Whether those efforts were authentic remained to be seen, but Grace would have the chance to decide for herself when she was older. Lily had moved to another state and remarried within a year, a pattern that suggested she hadn't learned much from our shared disaster. James occasionally received updates through mutual friends, but neither of us cared enough to seek out information about her new life. I'd started dating a fellow single parent I met at a playground, a widowed father whose 5-year-old son adored Grace. We were taking things slowly, building friendship first, and letting love grow naturally instead of rushing into intensity that could mask deception. But the most important relationship in my life was the one I'd rebuilt with myself. The woman who had trusted blindly, who had ignored her instincts in favor of keeping peace, who had let others handle the important decisions in her life. That woman was gone. In her place was someone who trusted but verified, who listened to her gut feelings, who took control of her own destiny. Someone who had learned that the most devastating betrayals often came from the people closest to you, but also that survival was possible, and happiness could be rebuilt on stronger foundations. Grace babbled something that sounded suspiciously like "Mama" and reached for me with her chubby arms. I scooped her up and kissed her dark curls, breathing in the sweet scent of her baby shampoo. "You ready to go home, little love?" She gurgled and clapped her hands, and I took that as a yes. As we drove through the city, I caught sight of Bella Vista in the rearview mirror, the scene of the most painful night of my life, but also the night I'd taken back my power. The restaurant looked smaller somehow, less significant, just another building in a city full of places where life changed in an instant. My phone buzzed with a text from my new boyfriend. "Hope you and Grace had a great day. Dinner tomorrow? David wants to show Grace his new dinosaur book." I smiled and voice texted back, "We'd love to. See you at 6. This time, I wouldn't ignore red flags or dismiss gut feelings. This time, I'd ask the hard questions and demand honest answers. This time, I'd build something real with someone who deserved my trust and who would never take it for granted. The best revenge against those who had tried to destroy me wasn't living in the past or plotting further punishment. It was living fully in the present, surrounded by people who valued honesty and loyalty, raising my daughter to be strong and independent, and opening my heart to new possibilities while never forgetting the lessons that betrayal had taught me. Grace fell asleep in her car seat as we pulled into our driveway, her tiny fist curled around a toy dinosaur David had given her. I carried her inside, grateful for the quiet evening ahead, grateful for the life we'd built together from the wreckage of someone else's deception. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new choices. But tonight, in our peaceful home, surrounded by evidence of the life I'd created through sheer determination and the support of true friends, I felt something I'd thought was lost forever. I felt complete. Sarah Williams now runs a successful marketing consultancy from her home office. Grace is a happy, healthy toddler who loves books, dinosaurs, and her extended chosen family. Marcus continues to work on rebuilding his relationship with his daughter through supervised visits and therapy. James and Rachel recently welcomed their first child together, making Grace a very excited honorary cousin. The Chicago condo was eventually sold at a loss, with the proceeds split between the divorce settlements. Lily's lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice, and she was ordered to pay Sarah's legal fees. The case became a cautionary tale in family law circles about the dangers of using marital assets to fund extramarital relationships.